I'm going to call the meeting of the Milton Plan Commission for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019 to order, and welcome you all to the Milton City Hall. And the first item on the agenda, Eileen, is roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Paulson.
Here.
And Hubbard.
Present.
Rar.
Here.
And Ferdehurst.
Present.
And Ramsey.
Here.
There are 5 present.
So, well, we can't go to the public hearing yet. So we go to the, under the agenda, item number 1, minutes.
No.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So should we go ahead with the design review?
I think we could probably do Springs.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, let's go to the spring. Let's spring to springs. So this the design review, office expansion with parking lot and patio redevelopment, Springs Window Fashion, 7540 Graber Road. Who is going to take it, Eileen or Mark? Eileen.
Abby
View
Road.
where they draw
Okay.
in on the aerial.
Oh, yeah.
The view where they draw in on the aerial what the change is.
I was just trying to provide the context
And
first.
Abby wrote the staff comments, and I think they lay it out pretty well. 3,500 square foot office addition, 1 story.
Responding.
And then parking, and this is to service the main visitor entryway. And then it's, the recommendation is approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments and stormwater management
Sorry, I'm not,
approval.
it's not responding. Go. I don't know why they can,
The squirrels that run the internet here.
That's
are
right.
trying to pedal to keep up.
We've had some issues the last few days.
we're confined before the meeting. I'm sorry, you wanted to go where?
No, there was one drawing where you had the, it drawn on the aerial, just to kind of show where the,
Give us some context. Here,
the next one.
yep.
Yeah, it's the southwest
This-
corner
yeah,
of the
this one.
existing building.
And so the, a little hard to see, but on the blue, that, the blue dash line, that parking lot will go away. And, then this blue dash here is the new,
Here's the blue dash right here.
I thought there are 40 parking spots which go away, right?
Right, but they still meet the,
Okay.
I think the applicants are here. They could maybe
Well,
answer
you
any
guys want
questions.
to say anything? Whatever you plan to say. Well, there's a microphone. Yeah, go ahead and talk
Probably the-
about the site first and then the
Site, yeah.
building.
So I'm Spencer Christensen at Veerbecker, and to talk about these sites, we're looking at the southwest corner of the site, which will be the main visitor entry towards the office building. And as part of this project, we're going to be softening up the landscape, adding some more green space and taking away a few parking stalls, 40 parking stalls, but we will still be meeting the city's parking requirements. We'll also be looking to do on the north side of the building to redevelop the patio area and add some bike parking stalls there. A little bit of rework on the west side of the building, just getting rid of that underground drive entry. And then to meet city stormwater requirements, we're going to be doing a small bioretention basin right next to the existing rain garden and dry pond there. You also have some new landscaping going in to soften things up. Do you guys have any questions on the site?
Might be easiest just to pass the plan around.
Well, actually, it looks, I think the improvements which you are making does look very good. The building looks very attractive which you are building, and if you are retaining more water and adding more green space, can't complain about that, right? So,
Right. Taking away impervious area
yeah.
on this
yeah,
project.
Yeah, that's actually, those are all good things, so.
Thank you.
And the building looks actually quite nice compared to what's there now, right? So,
well,
Well, it adds to it, how about
It
that?
certainly adds to it, yeah.
Yes, it enhances, yes. Anything, so someone wants to talk about the building or any of that?
What's the material that is shown here in this?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Brian Mann. I'm with OPN Architects. I'm project architect for the Springs Window Fashions project and a resident here in Middleton. The building is about a 75,000 square foot, pretty extensive remodel of office space. The portion that we're looking at is heavily recladding the existing building, both in terms of glass and then an aluminum composite metal panel fascia. What we're trying to do is maintain some of the stylistic appearances of a 1960s modernist building, while sort of updating and turning it into a more contemporary interpretation of that. The primary materials that we're looking at using are pretty simple in nature. We're looking at an aluminum composite metal, an extensive use of glass to drive natural daylight into the space, and a composite wood veneer panel. So it's a concealed fastener rain screen system. Something that was kind of something I'd like to bring into attention is the flipping of the main entry from the north of the site to the south of the site, and in that way making it a more prominent main entry location. Any questions on the building?
Building now, it's all office, or do they do also do production there?
It is the current building now is about. Rob will have to maybe back me up on the numbers. I'll pull from my head.
But just-
It's roughly 80,000 square feet of office space
Okay.
and about 300,000 square feet of factory space.
Okay, so, and you're not
So
adjusting on the factory space?
the scope of this project is purely on the office improvements.
There's about 8,000 that is currently in the factory side that is gonna be part of the office expansion, but it's repurposing.
Are those, I mean, I drive by this all the time, so are they the same buildings, or are they separate buildings?
They're connected.
They're connected.
I'm sorry, I'm Rob Wheat with OPN Architects, project manager. There's about 8,000 square feet that is adjacent to the transition from the current office space to the factory that is gonna be converted to office space, so.
Any other questions?
I drive by this a lot too, and I think this is a beneficial project, not only for the business, but I think appearance as well.
Oh, so
We're trying to avoid making comments about 60s-style modernist buildings.
Well, what always struck,
You were very generous in your description, so.
what always struck me is there's a huge parking lot there.
Yeah.
And this really softens that appearance coming from the south.
So it looks like Wayne is ready to make a motion.
I will, I'll move approval, subject to the reviews as recommended. Staff comment.
Second.
Okay, any other questions and concerns? And also the stormwater management part, so. Okay, then all those in favor of the motion to approve the design review for office expansion with parking lot and patio redevelopment for Springs Windows Fashions at 7549 Graben Road, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Go and celebrate on the sunshine, so.
Thank you.
Okay, it's past 7:05, so we are going to go to the public hearing part here. So it's the public hearing for comprehensive plan update. It's the history and culture. It's the character, goals, strategy, and action items, discussion on economic development, economy goals, actions, and strategies. Anybody wants to speak either or favor or against or anything about this comprehensive plan update? Anybody wants to speak? Well, all right, if there are no takers, I'm going to close that part of the meeting and we go to item number 2. This is the design review for the fence for Free House, 1904 Parmenter Street.
Mark had read this.
You're Alex?
Mark?
I am.
The applicant, Alex Kammer, is here to speak to this.
Good evening, everyone. Alex Kammer. I'm one of the attorneys at Atterbury, Kammer, and Hague over on Greenway Boulevard. I'm also one of the owners of the Free House Pub, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak and answer any questions you have about my pretty discreet and simple project, which, in a nutshell, is taking a dilapidated fence and replacing it with something that is much nicer. Oh, you have the
Yep.
pictures up. So, yeah, what happened was that this fence has been with the building for at least 30 years. We have maintained it every year, and it's gotten to the point where it is, quite frankly, dangerous. The gates don't work. The sanitation folks do the best job they can, but they're not particularly kind to gates, and they have been beaten to hell, quite frankly. So the plan is to go the existing footprint of the fence with the design that I submitted right there on that slide, and also to expand it slightly to the east to cover what is the Free House. It is the back door, but it works as the it's the entrance to the kitchen. Now, the problem I have, or that we have, is that our staff, kitchen staff, comes out that door, sits on a milk crate, and smokes cigarettes, and it makes me insane because I drive past it 2 or 3 times a day in my office. So what I'm doing is going to expand that fence around and cover that door, build an actual stoop and a bench, so it's enclosed. It's a nicer looking fence, and that back door goes away. So with at least arguably one of the busier intersections in Middleton, I want to do my part to clean it up, and the Free House is delighted to be a member of the downtown community. So that's
I
in a
told you.
nutshell.
Go ahead.
Oh, on this picture we have here, so that larger awning in the center, right there, that's the one, that's the door that they come out.
Correct.
But that's not a customer door at all.
It isn't.
So you would propose the fence probably up to the first awning.
Not that far. It
Not that
goes
far.
maybe a foot past that
Okay.
awning,
Okay.
because they're windows that we don't want to interfere with.
Right. And Mark, can you scroll down to the design of the new fence?
Looks nice, doesn't it?
This is, the folks at Qualine are doing the installation and design of the fence, and so it was a combination of something that's tough enough for the application, and also tall enough, and also match some of the other structure on the building itself, so it doesn't look like it's a ultra-modern fence appended to an
To
old
a
building.
historic
Yep.
property.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Actually, can you scroll up a little more?
If you want, I can go to Street View and,
No, I mean, David's not here to comment on the design, but, yeah, I mean, the main concern is have it look somewhat consistent with that kind of historic character of the building.
Same goal. Absolutely same goal.
It seems to.
Couple questions. My understanding is the property line is within, the right-of-way, I guess, extends into the, beyond the fence, is that right?
That is a possibility. I don't think anyone really knows for sure, barring a proper survey. And I'm
There we
willing
go.
to concede that it might, given that the lots have strange, they're not perfect rectangles here. They're parallelograms. So it's very possible that as you move east down that sidewalk, that the fence may be intruding that right away. That's very possible. And it's been so existing for, again,
This is,
at least 30 years.
we, at the staff level, I flagged this actually as a concern because when I looked at the GIS, it seemed like that the property line was farther towards, the right-of-way line was farther into what looks like to be their property than is typical. And so I wasn't able to issue a zoning permit, and also for design review, it had to come here anyway. But I said that we wouldn't be able to just automatically allow the fence to be rebuilt without a license agreement. And they are willing to do that. They are going to in fact, did they go to the Public Works Committee last night?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they had their contractor lined up, and so they were anxious to proceed. And it's been very hard to get contractors these days. So
You
I
too.
cautioned them that they would be proceeding at their own risk. I wouldn't issue a permit in the meantime. I thought the design of the fence is attractive. It does need our. It's also the placement would need the license agreement and then also the approval by the Landmarks Committee for the design. It would be a contingency.
I would note one other thing. The existing fence that has now been taken down was flush with the sidewalk
Right.
surface. This new fence is going to be inset 3 inches, so it's going
Yes.
to be moving in the right direction, I guess, if you
Right.
want to look at it that
And
way.
and that was actually a big reason why I was happy to work with them to find a solution with the license agreement. I thought it's making a situation better, it's gonna look nicer and be more functional and safer.
Is there any safety concern at all about extending the fence over that kind of sidewalk that goes into the building? That's not an egress for customers for
Fire
emergency
egress or
purposes.
anything?
It is not.
No entry.
It is not, no,
But it's-
absolutely no
it could be
entry.
a fire egress, right?
It could be for kitchen staff, but that is, they would, yeah, so now they would have to come out that same back door, and now there's a gate about 6 feet away. That is the
They're-
common
You're not
access.
gonna turn it loop and go towards the building?
No.
Okay.
No, it's straight out. We had to make it a straight shot also because a lot of deliveries come through that gate.
But the current fence has something going across to the building
Correct,
that kind of screens some of the mechanicals.
correct.
So now there'd just be an open fence?
No, it's going to go past the awning and the door, and then it's going to go head to the south.
Okay, so it is gonna go.
It's gonna have the same, it will
Okay.
look, it will be, if you weren't privy to this conversation, you would never notice that the dimensions have changed. It's, I think, 3 feet to the east.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I'll move approval of the fence, contingent on approval by the Landmarks Committee and the execution of a license agreement.
Second.
Okay,
I have a question for Mark. Mark, will you be receiving a plan drawing that actually shows the layout and, because all we have right now is one panel of the fence, right?
I know. I've been trying. I've been trying.
So I would think that would be necessary before the formal
For the
approval.
license agreement.
Right.
I'm leaving that up to Sean Stowski to determine to his satisfaction how it's described. It might be described relative to the location of the sidewalk. They couldn't furnish a survey, they don't want to have a survey done. As he said, it's improving the situation. It's not worth pulling up the GIS, but we're talking probably a couple feet. I mean, it's nowhere near the property line, from what I can tell, but it's improving the situation. And so, this is one of those situations where I thought, okay, let's protect the city's interests, have the license agreement, make sure Landmarks and that who are okay with the design. But in terms of location, it's gonna be an improvement. So I left it at that, and whatever Sean works out with them.
And
So-
I think it's clear we're okay with the design, but if Landmarks wants to change some of the design, I'm not sure that cap on that fence is consistent. I'm not an architect, so I don't know, but
I know.
if they come up with something different, we're really fine with the concept and the location. Do you see the cap? I'm not sure that's,
Right.
but the
Well,
Landmarks has architects on there.
yeah, we should let them have a go at it, so.
Well, he said if we hadn't gone through this process, he would have waited a year because he wasn't gonna have a contractor lined up for the rest of the year, basically. So I don't know if that
I mean,
was
if-
him just saying that or.
So I'm just saying for the record that if Landmarks changes some of the design of the fence, but it's in the same location, we're fine with it.
Agreed. I certainly, having formerly lived within a block of this, I agree, it's a
Oh, you have?
great improvement.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we are inside of a agreement, so all those in favor of approving the design review for the fence for Free House on 1904 Parliamentary Street, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 4, which is the extraterritorial certified survey map to create 4 residential lots, Hubbard Street, 4577 and 4601 Evergreen Road in the town of Middletown. Who is gonna take it?
I'm gonna recuse myself from this discussion. I have
Okay.
so as a plan commissioner, I'm recusing myself, but I will make myself available as a citizen
Okay.
to make comment if you so desire.
Yeah, well, you can sit over there and we can put a call on you, so. Okay, so who's gonna take it?
I am.
All right, Eileen.
I think in your packet, you had some information, Leaf had submitted a letter, and I also described in the staff comments that we did, Mark and I walked this with the applicant a couple weeks ago, and we also asked him at the end of last week. It's just been crazy, so I didn't have time to do it before, but asked him just for the description or the lineal feet of the proposed easement with an alternative easement that had been discussed, and they did provide that, and that was in your packet as well. I think this is a tough one because if we, if we were designing it from the very beginning, and I think a planning commission member said that the last time it was discussed a month ago, we probably would have done it differently. I think, they did submit a preliminary checklist for the environmental assessment. There are trees impacted. The information that Leaf had submitted, showed a difference of about 40 or 45 trees, I think, with what he had proposed on lot 1 versus what would be proposed. But, is that significant in terms of the hundreds of trees that are out there? And, would we want to pursue it further? I think one thing that I did say in the staff comments, well, two things. One is, I did check with the fire department just because I kept thinking they would likely, for us, they would make it require it to be hard surface. But I double checked, they had also submitted something, but I just wanted something for our file. And our fire department, the fire district is okay, as long as it's gravel with a base enough to hold their fire trucks. And that's already a condition of the town. And then I also requested that we review the access easement, because without that access easement, lot 3 is not developable. So we can't really do a CSM without doing that. We've definitely required that access easement in the past. Most of the time we have it reviewed. There was one situation probably about 25 years ago, I went back to look at it in the city, and we didn't require that, and we should have required the review of it to see who's going to maintain it, what happens if a tree falls across it. Again, just from a safety perspective and future viability of the buildings on the lots, so.
Mark, can you show where that access easement to lot 3 is?
There's the second page of this, I think this is from the applicant. The attorney for the trust is here.
This is the one that came in today. It's on the original, you mean?
No, this one right here. This is the one,
That's showing the proposed, the flesh colored is the existing, or the tan is the existing, and the blue is the proposed.
Oops, sorry.
and this was in our packet.
No,
No, it just got submitted today
Oh,
from the applicant.
So which got submitted? I just want
This
to
one,
make
what you're
clear.
looking at right now.
The blue,
Yeah.
Yes.
This proposal has been all along, what
Right.
they're proposing. They
This
just
is no
wanted to
different.
show us, I'm sorry, this proposal has been all along, and it was in your packet,
yes. But this is new.
but this is new. Just showing the difference between the two, the tan one and then the blue that's added.
So the tan is existing.
Yep. Except maybe not quite that wide in terms of, that the easement is that wide, but not.
That easement's that wide, but not the surface.
So.
Could you, for terms of process, I was staring at this afternoon, and how is this design different than what we saw last time?
The applicant has not changed the design. They are still proposing. This is showing what Leaf had presented in his letter.
Right.
This was his proposal.
So in our review
Has-
last time, we did ask for some issues to be addressed.
And we,
Come back to us.
right, and we did look at the lineal feet, and the applicant may be able to talk about that, the engineer's here too. And that is about the same in terms of lineal feet. We didn't ask them to address the tree issue. Leaf did a tree inventory of the differences on lot 1, and that's a difference of about 40 trees. 40 more trees would be taken with
Scrolling a lot.
the alternative
All right,
that's
I'll
being
stop scrolling.
proposed.
No, go back to one of the
And we also
designs.
walked it.
which one do you want?
So,
This one?
and no, I just want to clarify, the staff notes references the letter from Leaf Hubbard. Is that, I couldn't find the new letter. Is that the same letter?
It should be in the, it's not, it's a new one that he submitted on Friday.
Okay.
And that includes.
On
the
Friday, and
tree
that's when the, okay.
Isn't that this, where's this letter? It's this one, right?
Should have been, we
April
had some
19th.
issues also accessing our website if it was.
Yes.
If you were outside outside
So
City
actually-
Hall. And, we also, the original CSM didn't get included in the, packet the first time, but then it got added yesterday. But at City Hall, we were having an issue. We didn't even know whether or not emails were going out to notify people about that, because we didn't get ours until last
scroll
night,
down.
so.
I'm just
But the
trying to read.
process was followed, we just weren't getting notified.
And I guess one more process question before we get into it. Do we have a, boundary agreement with the town of Middleton over this property?
Not over
Does-
this one.
Okay, because the concern, if you just zoom out and look at the area, is that, there's urban type development from the city directly to the east and to the south. There's more rural development from the town to the west. So is this considered in part of our plan that this would eventually be urban development? I mean, by doing this CSM, we are in essence saying it'll never be, annexed into the city.
Why,
And-
It may not be.
because the
saying that-
lot sizes
Yeah.
are not, right, so,
It could potentially be redeveloped within the city if it was brought in.
right.
Our agreement with the town of Middleton essentially says we'll be exercising our extraterritorial review rights for an area that's east of the section line between sections 4 and 5, which is essentially the end of the golf course.
Yes.
Extended north and south. So this is definitely in an area where we review those. Doesn't mean that there couldn't be redevelopment in the future. There had been no immediate plans to annex this or
But
to.
if you zoom
develop
back in, Mark, that
Obviously,
area
the
that's
applicant
north of
does
that, subdivision in the city, all the way
Hidden
up.
Oaks.
That doesn't cover the entire parcel. There's
This is Hidden Oaks.
other, right, there's another parcel right up there that's,
This is the northern property line of,
right,
right here.
okay,
And
yes,
so see these lots here?
yes.
On the
those
left
are-
side?
Those are Hidden Oaks, yes.
Those are these
Right.
lots here.
There's open space that abuts with proposed lot 1 and part of the proposed lot 2.
Part of the open space is owned by the city, it's owned by the city, and then there's a town cemetery somewhere near here,
That's
The
over
town-
here.
Town cemetery is to the east.
on the east side of the road,
It's right here.
yeah.
And there's also some town land that's open, that's between Hidden Oaks.
So it probably wouldn't be appropriate for urban development in the city at some point in time, without an access off of, through Hidden Oaks.
It could potentially be Hidden Oaks. Or if Evergreen was improved. We have Whispering Pines just to the east, east of the cemetery.
Right.
So there's a public, I mean, this is city land right here.
Yes.
City land, town land, and then city land continues here.
And then there's some town land to the north.
Then this is, yeah, and then this is county parkland right
Yeah,
here.
that's kind of,
So again, if we were designing it, we would have probably, or if we'd been asked, we probably would have said, hey, can you minimize it? But this is what they're proposing, and it is a difference of 40 trees, but is that significant in terms of having, I mean, it's a lot of trees, but is it significant with these heavily wooded areas? I have no idea. Maybe you guys have an idea of how many trees are total on the property, the whole 20 acres. I don't know.
I have
Hundreds?
no idea.
Hundreds?
Yeah, we don't know.
yeah, my biggest concern is that it splits that lot number 1 right in the middle and making it more difficult to use, whatever you want to do with it. That's my biggest concern here. so.
Well, there is a MG&E easement that's partly on the existing drive aisle now.
So what does that mean?
Well, that means that can't be built on anyway, because it's an MG&E easement. But they are,
where's the
they are
MG&E?
extending it. The MG&E easement is a portion of that existing tan-colored easement. Adam, do you know how or Lauren, do you know how long that is, or? We do have it probably in the original CSM that was submitted.
I don't know how long it is unless you have. I mean, the thing about the peach or the tan or the flesh, whatever color you want to call that, is the existing driveway that was hard to see, permitted by the town and the city when the lots were originally subdivided.
Right.
Oh, thank you, you're so nice. And so that is not going away. The owner of that house is unwilling to release that flesh-colored taupe easement that exists. So that's gonna remain as the access point for 1 and 2. She is firm on that, and we're not going to be able to change her mind. Lot 4, if you can scroll down a little bit, Mark, is going to get, there's an existing driveway there. We're going to be recording
Off of Evergreen.
off of Evergreen. We're going to be recording an access easement there. And so then the question becomes what we do about Lot 3. And so I think one of the commissioners mentioned looking at other options. The reality is when this was conceived, because that driveway, the peach-colored driveway, can't move, it was determined that the least destructive thing to do was to do the extension that's in blue. And so certainly, I mean, we could look at doing other alternatives, but in that scenario, we're going to end up with a third driveway, meaning the one that's on Lot 4, the one that's on Lot 1 and 2, and then we would have to come up somehow, look at the alternatives. And we haven't explored the alternative that was proposed by LEAF. We would have to look at that along with our other options to see what would work. So I think what was conceived originally was done to try to keep it as simple as possible, given the circumstances there of what was decided, 32 years ago, when that house was built and the driveway was approved.
But what does have to get added is, because Lot 2 doesn't, right now, that drive is on their property, but with the new configuration, it wouldn't be. So there does have to be an easement added, right, for the back portion and also for the front?
No, it's actually technically where it's located is exactly or very close to exactly what's shown on that CSM. The difference, her lot's kind of a T now.
Right, the driveway is the same, but the easement isn't the same because she wouldn't have needed an easement on her property, right? Or does she have an
She
easement?
does have an easement now. That's what, it's a weird T
It's-
shape.
Yeah, this is the original outline right
Yep,
here.
you can see,
See
so that still exists. You're right, that little drop down, I
This-
guess.
This part had to be an easement because that wasn't on her property.
Correct, exactly,
And that current driveway is not paved,
correct,
and is proposing to still be not paved.
correct.
But the extension in blue would be paved?
Incorrect, it's gonna match
But-
what's there.
But I think it's important, the easement ends here currently, right? The easement is defined as being on this, that's where it currently ends. This part is currently on her property, but there's no easement for that because it's currently her property.
Right,
So
but
she needs this to have connection still to her property. She needs this easement to be recorded with this project. with this-
correct, and she won't give up the land that she has to give up for Lot 1 unless that easement remains, that she gets the easement she needs to access her property.
So would that drop-down part, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
would that drop-down part go away then, and she would take the blue part, so that at least part of it would go away?
No. No, she's not willing to make any changes to the existing driveway. So we are stuck there.
I just wanted to ask that.
The only flexibility that exists with respect to what is proposed is how Lot 3 gets its access. What's going on with Lot 2 is the die is cast on that. And that is outside completely of our control.
The current house is on Lot 2,
Correct,
on what would become Lot 2.
correct.
So if I remember our concern was that by being wedded to the existing driveway, which is not paved, so you're not ripping up too much, it seemed to, in this configuration, bifurcate Lot 1, which really makes Lot 1, although there are developable areas, our concern was less about the trees and more about the fact that when by CSM you create a lot that in essence becomes hard to develop, then we know that at some point in time in the future, whoever owns that is going to come in and want. We don't like to create undevelopable lots, right? Almost by law, we can't. But what I hear you saying is there is no wiggle room from the underlying landowner on the location of that tan peach driveway.
From the owner of the house that's shown on Lot 2, there is no flexibility.
So so all of the alternatives that are in our packet are, at least according to the landowner, not feasible, not even considered viable.
According to the legal structure that currently exists, we cannot change what is in the peach. If,
The legal structure is because it's a trust.
no, that lot is owned by another party. Where the house is, that T or flag lot, that is owned by someone separate from the trust. So we don't control that. That is totally outside of our control.
We know that before?
But the portion outside of the T that's shown as future Lot 1 and 2,
Correct,
and Lot 3 and 4 is currently owned by the same trust.
correct. Everything that's not within that little lot is owned by the trust.
No, I know, I was looking at the parcel map earlier this afternoon, so.
Would you clarify, everything in 1, 3, and 4 is owned by the trust, is that?
Well, forgetting the little part of 1 that 2 technically owns now, but yes.
Okay.
Mark's gonna pull up the,
So that
Parcel
lot is
identification.
not owned by the trust.
So how did that happen, right in the middle of the,
Well, that's owned by the person who would own Lot 2.
Right,
and this was a CSM approved by the city and the town
Back
correct,
in the 80s.
back in the 80s,
correct.
Before I came.
before you,
Yes, somebody other than Eileen signed off on this.
which, I mean,
So this is
for the general audience is generally why flag lots are
Right.
generally avoided in
Yes.
CSMs.
We probably would have aust about that too if we.
So this is owned by Marita.
all of us.
Yeah, that's
Whoops, shoot.
No, I understand that now.
Laufenberg.
Oh, yeah, it's owned by.
They
someone.
own the farms.
Yep. She's Leaf's sister, owns that.
And then this is owned by the trust.
Correct.
Yeah.
Doesn't say, well,
Although when we
trust,
look at
there
it,
it is, yep.
when we look at a CSM, we tend to not think about who owns the parcel now, because we want to think, because at some point in time, once you create a lot, it can be
It's
bought and
there,
sold.
Sure.
I understand that. I think this site comes with a lot of complications, both in terms of how this has evolved to get here, and just what the underlying wish of the settler of the trust is to divide this property in the way it's.
And the slope coming right up.
Well, that's a whole other, I mean, I've done a lot of site visits in my day as a real estate attorney, but this was nuts. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
very unusual property.
It's very beautiful.
Yes.
We really appreciated walking it with you all. So.
Yep, and, everyone's been great. Eileen and Mark and Gary all came out. It was election day. It was a very nice day, thank goodness. But there are a lot of complications here. There's not an easy part of this, I think, is the reality.
So I guess here's what I'm struggling with, is we saw this in March, and we said, well, let's defer it and give them time to come up with other options. And what is before us is exactly what was presented in March. Right?
Yeah, and I think what I hear him saying is that they don't have any other options if they have to keep the peach-colored,
So that's,
that, they don't have that ability to. Although,
but
They
that's
could
But
the,
she needs
that-
this access to get to her
they
Lot
could
2.
keep that one.
She needs this part to get to her lot.
Right,
though.
they could keep that part though. I mean, there could still, the blue part could still be in front but they haven't engineered that at all, so.
but from a planning perspective, the decision that driveway has to stay in that particular location is not driven by what for us would be a planning concern about the lots and the configuration. It's,
well,
on the other hand, we'd hate to, beautiful, you'd hate to rip down the trees and alter the landscape.
so why would the owner of the lot number 2 allow that blue path there if he or she doesn't want to even move the peach colored one? I mean, why, that's her property there, why would she allow that one?
when the CSM is approved, it won't be her property anymore, and she's not paying for it. So she's okay with what is proposed in terms of the extension.
And lot 3 does not get created without an access easement.
Right, it
'Cause you
has to
can't-
have the access.
You can't create a lot that doesn't have either a direct access to the street or a access easement.
And this part here, Gurdeep, is too steep.
It's too steep for anything.
I see.
And we don't want too many blind driveways on a steep curve on
Right.
Evergreen Road.
Right.
We can see
Could you
how
clarify,
steep
you
this is.
said that if the CSM is approved, the owner of Lot 2 would no longer own Lot 2?
No. She won't own the blue part that's technically on her lot now.
He would own the part that,
Correct, that drop down.
Right.
well, but also the blue behind her house to the west of her.
Correct, and she has consented to that. So Eileen had mentioned the access easement, that is drafted, we're happy to share that with you. It's standard and customary for what you would see in a relationship like this with customary allocation of obligations. And, it's all structured to work so that this can get built and these lots can all be accessible for development.
And we don't know if more impervious is put in, what any stormwater measurements would do for trees, or what it would do. The only measure we have is what happens on lot 1, and that's the difference of 40-some trees, but we don't know on lot 2 or 3. So that's one thing that, we didn't ask them to provide that after we had walked it. We asked just for the lineal footage. Maybe we could go to that mark it's in the packet for sure. And just review
Is it after Leaf's letter?
I don't know.
The number of trees? Yeah,
It's at
there
the very end, I think, Eileen.
Yeah, there are those two tables, yeah.
Okay.
While he's doing that, just remind us, the new lot, let's do this first.
I didn't write that, I think
Oh,
that
I
was
think
it. You
go
passed
one up.
that.
There you go.
Right, that was in the back.
And maybe Adam can explain the lineal feet, that's the difference.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Adam Carrico Engineering. Yeah, we essentially took the linear footage from the pavement edge at Evergreen Road, following along the existing driveway to the existing home garage door, and then additionally the footage from the corner there to the garage of a potential home on lot 3, and added that footage up, and that was 1,245 feet. Then we added up the existing driveway, which has to stay from Evergreen Road to that existing house to the garage point again, which is 750 feet, and then added a possible alternative to get to lot 3 to that garage point again, and that total with the existing driveway was 1,465 linear feet. So there's a difference of about 220 linear feet.
So,
But not paved.
it's not paved.
But wouldn't trigger a stormwater permit?
It-
Or would it trigger a land
Actually,
disturbance permit?
It would trigger all of that because gravel is still considered impervious.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant what they're proposing.
Yeah.
So you're within 200 feet of being required to do stormwater, is that?
No, the linear feet doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the stormwater. It's just the actual square footage of impervious.
Yeah, adding,
So adding the driveway to the east side of the existing home, coming that route, would require us to do stormwater management on the lot. The additional impervious there is more, and that was part of the reason why we looked at impact of the land and keeping the additional impervious under the threshold for needing stormwater.
But if you had the driveway here, you wouldn't have this part of the driveway.
But the driveway would come down and would have to connect to lot 3 as well.
Correct.
That's what,
Well, and
the alternative one in the back, correct?
The town has stated that if we deviate from the plan that they've already approved, that they will require stormwater management.
Oh, no matter what, no matter how many extra square feet are added, or?
Well, yeah, it's gonna be, I'm not sure why, I guess they discussed the stormwater management after it was approved and basically said, well, you know, we're not gonna require it. We're not gonna make them come back. They've already approved it. I think it was an afterthought on their part.
And so, you know, just going back to that, with the peach set in stone, if the consensus is that the blue is not appropriate, what we're going to have to do is go back and re-engineer a couple of different options, because the alternative that's been proposed hasn't been engineered. And so I think what we'd have to do is look at a lot of different options, and I think what we'd want is some specific direction. You know, Eileen and I talked about this. We'd want to work with the town and staff and get input tonight as to what specifically you are looking for, because we do feel very constrained by the various factors that we have to manage in this process. So we stand behind and firmly believe that the blue is the best thing to be done under the circumstances. I think you've already noted they're less than ideal, starting with the fact that the driveway was put where it was originally put in the first place. And, you know, we're sort of battling a lot of factors that are outside of our control, which is atypical in a CSM, right? Typically in a CSM, you control the whole site. We do not. Yeah. And then you add in the slopes and the willingness of participants, and it gets very difficult. And I will say, right, I've been a real estate attorney for a long time. When I first saw this, I said, why does the driveway go there? And I was very quickly, schooled by Adam and Noah Preve, who did the CSM, to explain it. And then I trust their judgment, having worked with them before. But then I went out to the site and I thought, oh, now I understand. It is very challenging on the site. So,
well, I don't think I'm saying that the blue driveway is wrong. If we approve the peach driveway, then the blue is the only viable option. But from our perspective, it sounds like what we're hearing from the applicant is it has to be this way because we decided it has to be this way, and we're really trying to avoid having to do stormwater management, which from a planning perspective, it's like trying to configure something to stay under the square footage to avoid having to get a stormwater permit is not, that's what it sounds like to us.
And maybe that might be a misunderstanding, and I think perhaps from the last meeting, certainly that's not what we're trying to say today. We are constrained by the peach, and we think, based on the work we've done, that the smartest move is the blue. The blue was not selected with any thought about alternatives and, oh, this is our cheapest way to do it because we don't have to do stormwater.
The constraint by the peach, just so we're clear, is not a planning or topographic constraint. The constraint by the peach line is the current landowner's desire.
Well, I think it was approved, and I don't know how they drew it in 1987, why they decided that was the right location, but that went through a municipal process. It's shown on the CSM that currently exists. So I'm not trying to be difficult. What I'm saying to you is someone at some point with approval decided that was the right way to do it. I don't know why that was. I mean, maybe if you went back in the files, I'm sure Eileen wants to do that. She has a lot of files in her office. Maybe we could figure that out, but I don't know that we can. And so what I'm saying to you is we're constrained by that. We can look at other alternatives if that's the will of the Plan Commission, but I'm not sure what we're going to come up with, and that's going to require looking at sort of all the decisions that have been made. And there are various constraining factors on that.
If you have to stick with the peach color, and if you do the blue, and I think I asked this when we were out there walking, but I can't remember the answer. But could there be something where, I know you're gonna walk lot 3 when that house is sited for the tree removal. Could you do something like that, knowing what the fire department's wanting, which is widening at certain areas? Could you do that with somebody from the city and the town to say, hey, let's minimize the tree removal for that? Because certainly you've shown some areas that are widened, but maybe they don't have to be in that location if there's some really nice trees. So maybe you can minimize the amount of trees. I know the fire department's requiring a clear zone, right? 12 feet plus a clear zone of 2 feet, or is it 3 feet on either side?
Well, and our town approval requires that they supervise the removal of the trees. So they have to go through that process. We can't just go out there and start cutting down trees.
I wasn't sure if that was just for the house site or if that was for the driveway too, because I think that would help minimize the impact for the trees if it could be for the driveway also.
Yeah, I mean, subject to the town's approval as well, I'm sure, as long as the fire department is okay, that actual bump out that they're requiring, that could be shifted either way, working with the city or whomever, if there are some trees that are worth saving in the way, definitely.
Because maybe if it doesn't have to be on lot 1, maybe it could be on lot 2, bump out, and then maybe there's fewer trees there because there's a path that we walked on, right? So there might already be fewer trees, because and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but isn't the path that we walked on lot 2 essentially where you showed that blue?
Correct. I think that blue is designed to follow that natural path that exists.
So if you could put any bump outs, if the fire department's okay with it on lot 2, then you've minimized, you know, because if it's already
Contours are already on there.
cleared, right? Then
Yeah, that's,
maybe that's the compromise that would
Like the more
reduce the
contours.
number of trees that have to be
no,
removed.
the 2-foot contours show you.
I don't know if you can see the path on an aerial, I don't know.
I tried to look.
Oh, man,
Well, it's hard to see without the
Anyway.
contours.
it just seems,
So-
if that's, you know, it's just an idea. To help resolve
We don't
that.
want to labor the point.
It would
path
help me to
basically-
also understand, we have the application,
Path
plus we
basically
have the
follows the
comments from Leaf Hubbard. Could you clarify the nature of any agreements between you and Leaf regarding the
Yeah, you could put a
property?
driveway there.
So right now, the only parties who have any interest in any agreements are going to be the trust, Marita Laufenberg, who owns the house, and then Finn Hubbard owns Lot 2 of CSM 5202, and he will be benefited by the driveway easement that's being created. We need to do that because, well, we won't get into that. That's too complicated and not really germane. But the future owners of the lots, of which, as things are currently structured, and I was not involved in this, my understanding is that those 4 lots will be distributed among the Hubbard family. All of those parcels will be benefited by easements, allowing them to access their property. And those easements will all be on essentially the same terms. So everybody's burdened in the same way, everyone's benefited in the same way. They're designed to be equitable, which is what would be typical.
So there's a legal commitment for that future transfer? Is that?
I did not work on that, so I can't speak to that. My understanding is that this configuration is contemplated as part of the larger estate plan for Norton Hubbard, who owns this property. And my understanding is those lots will be distributed in accordance to that plan. So that's,
Trying to understand ownership interests.
yep. And again, I have not worked on all of that, so I'm not, and I haven't looked at it, I'm not privy to that, so I don't know exactly who's getting what. It's my understanding Leaf is getting Lot 1, but I've not verified that myself.
Okay, let me
So
try
could you
to,
just have a lottery, so, you know, maybe,
I'm sorry, what?
a lottery, no, he's.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, honestly, I was hired to draft a driveway easement for this, and this has obviously turned into a little bit more than that. So, that's not my area.
So let me try to land this
Yeah,
plane.
Leaf, you want to say something?
Land the plane, okay.
Leaf want to say something, so you can,
Can you?
yeah, he can.
Well,
Sure.
It's a citizen.
Well, I was gonna ask you just a couple more questions. So, well, let's just take a step back and say, why does a city have extraterritorial review of a CSM in a town? And it's largely to preserve the future developability of sites that may annex themselves into a city. It's not just to control towns, it's to preserve comprehensive plan and development interests. And so that's why, at some point in time, the decision to put these into these 4 lots would kind of mean that they would not be likely to be developed into the city. And so if they stay in the town, at some point in time, we defer to the town, let them choose what works for them. But the zoning now in the town is minimum lot size of, these all comply?
I was told they all comply.
They all
I asked
comply,
the county.
so they're all gonna be lawful lots according to the town zoning ordinance, so that's like an R1.
It's an egg.
It's an ag, but it's single family only. Do you know the zoning?
I've not been involved in that. But they are
think
single,
Leaf-
I mean, they're designed for single-family
Maybe Leaf
development.
can answer
Yeah, go ahead, Leaf.
Leaf Hubbard, 7616 Kenyon Drive, City of Middleton. All right, here, let me make a couple of clarifications. The peach, that is not all set. The only part of the peach up there that's set is from there, and it doesn't go on to Evergreen Road because it goes back onto lot. So it's, the easement is capsulated there. It doesn't go all the way to Evergreen Road, okay? So you have an easement that is landlocked, okay?
Current easement.
Current easement.
Just this part.
And it goes just to there. The easement that's being proposed is twice the distance on Lot 1 than it is at this time. It's a ½ acre on Lot 1. So the statement that we're all being equally, I can't remember what you said, excuse me, burdened is, well, you can see that Lot 1 is going to shoulder the majority of the burden of the CSM. To say that there aren't other options is not true. We could, this is just lines on a paper. The CSM could, the lines could change. The CSM could draw a CSM that includes that entire driveway with the easement as one lot. So the point here is that the applicant was asked to look at alternatives. That's what this group asked last time. What they have returned with is nothing but what they came with the first time. They didn't follow the direction of the Plan Commission, in my opinion. The other point is the stormwater issue, as well as the vegetation issue, are 2 other issues that have been addressed here to some extent. But I think the major issue here is that the easement that's being proposed is twice the amount on Lot 1 than that is there presently. And Lot 1 will shoulder the majority of the burden with this CSM.
So,
Thank you.
one question here, I'm reading that the width is 30 feet, but I thought it was 10 feet plus 2 feet plus, yeah, this is on attachment number 2, easement, existing easement on proposed lot 1 is 410 feet long by 30 feet wide.
The easement is wider than the
Oh,
actual
easement is wide,
driveway.
okay, so
The
that's
easement is 30 feet
Okay,
wide,
okay, okay.
the entire length
All right, so-
of the proposal.
And that's because it includes utilities and possible future.
Right, there is a MD&E utility in that easement. How wide that actually is unknown to myself. But I would assume that that's considerably smaller than the ingress-egress easement that's being asked for.
Any other questions for Leaf?
I mean, it'd be good to have legal counsel, because I'm kind of guessing based on my knowledge of the law, but whether a particular lot is impacted negatively is not as much our concern in a extraterritorial
Right.
CSM. It's whether the location of the easement impairs the ability in the future for a lot to be developed.
Right, that and also.
And that, yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, no.
Well, I didn't.
And the stormwater and the slopes and all
And the,
that.
and the trees, and that's what we were trying to ascertain. And they did everything we asked them to do. We didn't ask them to compare the total amount of trees or to engineer it. And that might have been my fault not to ask, but, after we saw it and.
See the driveway here.
And just to
But-
clarify, I'm not entirely sure what we're talking about here with respect to the easement, but the way the easement will work is it covers what's as built, meaning what's as improved with the actual surface. So that thing is what it covers. It doesn't expand beyond that. I mean, I think part of that may be how it's reflected on the map, but the map does not create the easement. The easement is created by the separate document that Eileen is asked to review, and that constrains the scope of the easement to simply what exists in terms of the driveway.
And just one more clarification. On the proposed lot 1, there are 2 cross-hatched areas. That's the potential building envelope for a single-family home under the existing town zoning. Is that correct?
Correct. There's 2 building sites on Lot 1.
But there only would be allowed one.
I
building.
think there's, after 5 years, you could look at splitting Lot 1 and doing 2 sites on that property. We haven't fully investigated that, but that's our understanding. So
A split lot 1.
I think, assuming the town would permit that and you would permit that. I mean, the reality is, Lot 1 was made larger to accommodate the fact that it has to have the driveway on it. That was part of the overall planning
Okay, so-
to address that issue.
Now I'm hearing something different, which is, so everybody knows that you can create up to 4 lots with a CSM. Anything more, you need to go through a standard plat approval. And now it sounds like we're keep creating lots, and we're not gonna go to the full additional splits, that we avoid a whole.
No, that's not what I meant. I
Oh.
think what they did is did this depending on how this lot ultimately was developed. We have no plans to subdivide it further, and perhaps Leaf can speak to his plans.
Clarification. Lot 1, it's 4.5 acres. It was built, or it was drawn that way because I am supposed to receive 5 acres when this is all said and done. Because of some constraints, it's only going to be 4.5. That's why Lot 1 is larger than the other lots. Okay, it wasn't because of this easement. In fact, when I showed my father, the owner of this, with that easement down the middle of Lot 1, he was rather upset. And in fact, he wrote in writing, went to the town and had this CSM pulled from consideration. So he was not supportive of that configuration.
But the town has approved this configuration right now.
They have, because my father did not have the right to do what he did, because he had given up his rights to the applicant. So the applicant pushed ahead.
So, but I was given the understanding that lot number 2 was already preset. So how could that be changed then?
Lot 2 is being reconfigured, Gerda.
Oh, okay.
Lot 2 used to be that flag lot.
See this, Gertie?
That Lot 2 presently is that flag lot. And in this CSM draft, the Lot 2 is being reconfigured.
Oh, okay.
See the outline of that same shape, Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same shape as this shape here.
The town, Leaf raised some of these same concerns with the town about this configuration, and the town did review the trust planning that provides for this. They did review that. I'm sure if you wanted Matt Fleming to review that, that would not be an issue. But that was already reviewed and approved by the town.
So
And
look-
again, I think our concern is not so much the trust and who owns what, it's the lot
The
as presented from the plan.
Correct.
Perspective, yeah.
Yep.
All the things you mentioned, the trees, the steep slopes, the buildability.
So does Larry need to look at it, Larry or Matt?
I don't think so, but I think
Okay.
the only thing they would look at would be, what's the scope of review authority for a city on an extraterritorial CSM? Because we don't want to exceed our authority to force someone to redesign a parcel. We never get into that. We never want to get into a family dispute about property.
So we,
Okay, so-
But it's the planning issues for us as a city, the trees, the slopes, the stormwater, and the access.
and that's why I suggested maybe the compromise would be to look at the driveway, the actual driveway, and assuming that the easement limits the driveway to what's required by the fire department, then if we can minimize the impact to the trees by putting, if there has to be widened areas, putting them on, you know, the lot 2 or something, or because that's already open, maybe that minimizes the 40-some trees that would be lost with this, more that would be lost with this configuration versus an alternative, potentially.
Could there be access just extending the beach to number 3 rather than having that blue area there?
No,
I
don't think you can
have
do
to,
it.
yeah,
because that would cut right to the heart of 2.
and yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, the existing septic field for Lot 2, it prohibits that driveway from branching off within Lot 2.
Right.
So that's kind of why it was configured that way.
And to sort of go to the comments about the city attorney, I know Eileen has been working with them. I also have been working with them on this to try to sort out a way to resolve these issues. And so Matt Fleming is up to speed on this and what's going on here.
Okay, so what is,
Well, and any conditions we attach to the CSM have to be related to planning, not related to ownership or trust.
Right.
Correct.
Eileen, I didn't quite understand. What's the process you were proposing in terms of nailing down the location of the drive?
There's some areas that are widened on the proposed driveway as shown on, I don't know if it's on here or not, but I think you have a driveway configuration which shows some widening, and maybe that widening doesn't have to be on lot 1, maybe it can be on lot 2, depending on what the fire department says. Or maybe there's some wiggle room with where that is exactly with the fire department, so that fewer trees are taken from lot 1, and the area on lot 2 in blue is already fairly open. So I'm just saying, maybe you could transfer some of the, if it's widened, and, because there's like bypass areas that are required by the fire department.
And I think those were worked out with the fire department where they wanted them. I mean, we could, I guess, revisit that, but I think there was a lot of time spent with them walking the site to figure out how they wanted it to be done.
But truth be told, if they didn't come before us with the CSM, they could have ripped down as many trees as they wanted.
They could have.
Just
yeah,
on their own property.
That's
So-
true. And we have that a lot with other, when we have this issue on land that's within the city, we have that same issue. They could take it down before they came to us, and that's true.
so
I mean,
how,
either way, we're
That has
gonna lose some
happened.
trees from extending a driveway to make a lot developable.
so how about that, the alternate proposed by Lee for, I think, you want to show the other one? Where the,
And I think on that one, because it hasn't been engineered, if you don't like what's here, I think what we'd like is some specific direction so we can work on engineering and looking at a variety of alternatives, because there are a bunch of factors that we have to consider in doing that.
Well, I think the main, if,
yeah, so what is the problem
we-
with?
gotta click the middle thing. We're gonna send Mark to remedial mouse skills.
So what is that possible? Could that be done?
We would have to engineer that to determine how we would do that, and of course, work with the owner of Lot 2. And then she's indicated she's not giving up the existing drive, so at a minimum, we would have that, plus maybe something through the back.
And what I hear you, I'm sorry, Mike?
Adam?
Adam, that there's an existing septic drainage field on the existing house on future Lot 2 that is south of the house?
Our existing,
In that area? It's north, so you couldn't run. Where's the existing
Yeah,
septic?
right around where that B2 is.
Oh, okay.
In that area, just to the,
So you'd have to run up and around, not. I mean,
Why couldn't you go directly from a little bit earlier here? A little bit, that's right here, how would you describe that one, yeah? Yeah, you could go right from where the arrow is, straight to the lot, straight to the house, so.
so the advantage to us from a planning perspective is that this preserves a good 3.5 to 4 acres of developability on Lot 1, should it ever come into the city, which is our prime planning concern in extraterritorial CSM.
You mean not having any driveway on Lot 1?
Having a limited driveway as shown in this pink.
And so that we run into the problem of the existing driveway again. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and
Driveway,
yes,
the easement is not going away.
correct.
And it only goes till here.
Well, but she's not going to give up her land so that Lot 1 can be created if she doesn't get what she wants. So that's the reality that we have to deal with there. And so
But we have to deal with the reality of.
I understand that. And I will tell you, I teach planners, I teach at the business school, and I understand why this gives you heartburn. But again, we have a lot of constraints that we have to work with. So if what you're saying is you want this to be reconfigured from a planning perspective, I think, that's helpful direction to us, specific as to what you want, but we're still gonna have to work with all the same factors we're working with. And we can go and look at alternatives, but what we need is specific direction beyond, the alternatives. What we wanna understand is what the goals are, I think.
I think the goal was actually stated in our last decision. Could you,
did put the minutes in.
Yeah, the minutes.
packet.
Mark, would you pull that, yeah? So that they're more, the associated easements, so they're more directly on the lots they serve, the preserving.
More of the development potential proposed Lot 1.
And so I think what the concern was about that and why we did the site visit is because that peach area is not going away. And so so I think we recognize that. We worked with Matt and Eileen and Mark and Gary to look at that. And so I think what we need is different direction because of the fact that that driveway is not going away.
Well, if that, I mean, I don't want to state the obvious, but if that driveway is not going away and we say that we're not going to approve it with that driveway, then this whole thing just died. And then they start over.
It's not quite that simple. From your perspective, it's that simple. From ours, it's not quite that simple because we have some other factors we have to deal with, but correct.
I'm just talking about from our purview
Right,
and where we are in the process.
correct,
I understand that you have a whole different set of circumstances.
correct.
So I guess we have talked enough now, so you think you have enough input now to go from here?
I think what we'd like is a denial. If you're not going to approve what we've proposed, is a denial with specific direction as to what you want to see from a conceptual standpoint so we can look at all of the options.
Well, and I think we put
Well,
that in the minutes from our last meeting.
I think that was just about,
And as the attorney will tell you, our denial has to state specific
Right.
findings of fact and law that relate to our denial.
yep. I think if that's the direction
That would be either related to, it could be from our zoning ordinance or a plan for that area. Or I think it would uphold if it was a general denial on the basis that it inhibits the potential future development of the parcel as in possible annexation into the city.
Is that gonna be enough?
Okay, so you want to
Well, I
ask
mean-
Larry to formulate what?
Listen,
No.
we don't want to get into the
We don't wanna
middle of
get-
a legal mess
No.
Right.
because they can't decide how they want
Right.
to work together.
Right.
Well,
And I
I'm
think that's
sorry,
why she says-
that's a little, the land is owned by the trust right now. The trust is operating under very specific direction. So all the parties who need to participate in this have agreed. There's just parties who have future interests who are not in agreement. So the way this currently is proposed, everybody agrees to who has to participate in that process.
But the reason she wants us to deny it instead of delay it is the state law requires that when you deny something, if I have specific findings, those would then potentially be challengeable in a lawsuit to the city.
Okay, so I would
Kinda-
like that to be formulated by Larry. I'm not
Well-
expert on those, and I'm not going to do that, so unless you feel comfortable doing that.
I mean, so the options before us are to deny, or
With reason,
with reason,
or to
or to
accept.
defer, or to accept,
approve with conditions.
or to defer with a request to attorneys to draft us potential options for a legally defensible deny.
Okay, how about if
now I think you can tell we're torn here.
And I mean, the thing is, I actually asked Matt if he was going to be here tonight because I think that would have been helpful. But my understanding is that you sort of do your thing and involve him when it's necessary. But he is familiar with this, and I know, I mean, Eileen can speak to this. He's been working with her on it as well.
And maybe if we could, and I hate to suggest this because, you know, everybody likes a free night, especially one that's this nice, but we do have a fifth Tuesday. So if you deferred it and we had a meeting just for this with some more information from our attorney and some more information maybe, regarding square footages, because Adam looked at the lineal footage, well, what's the square footage of a driveway? We look at the constraints and we talk to the attorney and have his feedback, because I didn't get specific feedback on that. I just, wanted to focus
Can you
on
remind us of
trees
your
and stuff.
timeline? You need this solved at some point in time for potential development this season, or?
I think there was some hope that they could do work this season, at least straighten out the driveway, make the changes that they talked about with the fire department, and get moving forward with it.
Doesn't Lot 3 want to develop?
It would give me
I think there's a lot of factors that'll have to play into that.
it would give us a chance to talk to the fire department. I did not ask that specific question about where they want the bump outs and the passo.
And that, you guys walk that, and
But the town may play into that too, because the town has approved the specific. The town has approved the specific plan, so it may require going back to the town plan commission and board for approval if we change those.
But so just for the record, on behalf of your client, you are saying you would prefer a denial to a delay for 2 weeks?
well, if we're talking about a delay, so you can bring your city attorney here and they can be present, we can try to work through what the issues are. I don't think there's an objection to that. But I think if you're gonna say we need to redesign the driveway, I think what we're looking for is a specific denial as to that. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, so what do you want to do now?
Do you have a recommendation, Kurt?
I'm still of two minds, because on the one hand, there's kind of two different purposes of city review of a town CSM. On the one hand, we generally defer to a town and let them do what they want, conformance with their zoning ordinance. We don't get involved in people's properties. On the other hand, it's not unreasonable to assume that this parcel could eventually be annexed into the city for a type of development like in Hidden Oaks of a higher density, in which case preserving the maximum development potential of the site is consistent with city plans and policies.
Because it's bordered on the west and the south by Hidden Oaks.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to.
Although we don't have a specific boundary agreement on this
No,
parcel.
even
So
not.
we're forced legally to deal with kind of our general plan principles.
Okay, so you want to defer it to get the attorney's input?
at some point in time, we have to fish or cut bait, right? So I would make a motion to deny approval of the CSM on the finding that the current configuration impinges on future potential development on Lot 1.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion now? So, well, I guess you know more, I don't really know much about this, so, okay, all right, so, yes.
Where does that put the city?
It, so, a city that denies something with a statement on the facts, could certainly be challenged in court that if we acted arbitrarily or exceeded our authority, that, the denial, I mean, ultimately, the denial would have to come from council, right? Or is it just the plan
It
commission?
rests with the plan commission.
The rest with the plan commission?
I guess there could be an appeal to the council. There, I don't know if there ever has been on CSM.
I'm not a lawyer and I don't know the law on CSMs very well.
So why wouldn't you let Larry look at it and come up with, whatever he says, rather than,
I'd be fine with that.
would you be okay with that?
You would prefer that?
I would prefer that. Can I make a friendly motion?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
withdraw my motion.
Okay, withdraw.
Matt's the one who's been looking at it, so if we could keep
Yeah.
him in the mix, I think
Yeah,
that
we
makes
say the
more
city attorney.
sense.
Yeah.
The second
Yeah.
needs to agree.
Okay.
You agree to withdraw?
I do.
Okay,
I would make a motion to then defer and ask, city attorney for opinions, specifically with regard to the, scope of authority for the city plan commission in reviewing an extraterritorial CSM, with regard to preserving future developability of a site.
I'll second that.
okay,
That was you did.
all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
What do
So-
you think about my
So,
idea
and
of a
then-
special meeting?
Yeah, so when
And-
are we gonna defer this to? I think that's the question.
I know, I hate to ask you guys for a meeting, but
Well,
if it was one item,
I'm trying to make committee appointments, and that's my highest priority, so I don't think I'm going to.
This would be April 30th?
or it could be another day next week, but April 30th is a free Tuesday.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with that.
Could you be available for a meeting at 5 or 5:30 or 6 on the 30th?
I have to check, I don't have my schedule here, so we can see. And it also depends upon the attorney, how soon they can get to it.
Oh, I'll call him first thing in the morning.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
let me know how soon they can look at it, then I will check my schedule,
Okay.
so.
I thought our statement last time was kind of clear that we wanted to see an alternative configuration of the driveway to present
We
developability,
didn't see it,
so I,
To determine if a reconfiguration of the driveway needs to approve easements.
okay, well, thank you, everybody, and let's
Thank you.
move on to item number 5.
4-0.
that's it. It's a tough one.
Wow, Middleton High School. Let's go for it. Concept review addition and renovations to Middleton High School, 2100 Bristol Street.
Good evening.
Yourself and go for it now. So.
Actually, Mark here, if you want to go full screen, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wish I could get rid of this stuff. Is there a way of getting rid of this?
Okay.
And we did
You want to zoom out?
make some comments and request that you refer it. There's also a need to change our ordinance perhaps to add just as we do in a couple other zoning districts, add conditional uses above 35 feet with some findings. So would be looking at doing that when they would be wanting to come back for their design review.
What is the zoning district here?
It's R1.
R1.
Yep.
And is this
It's a
currently?
conditional use.
It's a conditional
And they
use.
have a conditional use. But. you know,
mean, the
We
alternative
do want
is,
them to go up, so.
the alternative is to do a PDD for the whole
It
site.
is.
Yeah.
So is that what you plan to do then?
No, I was just recommending, I did talk to our attorney about it, and he had said there are several ways to handle it. One would be a variance, which I don't think is the most appropriate.
No.
Another one would be PDD zoning, or another one would be to change our zoning ordinance so that we add some language like we do have in some other districts for some other uses, above 35 feet on a conditional use basis with certain findings. And I think I put those findings in the staff comments.
Yeah.
That it's appropriate for the site, integrated into the neighborhood, so.
So is that what you are recommending then?
That's what I'm recommending. We
Okay.
need to set a public hearing for that for the future. They're here for concept and then to get the whole process started, but they wouldn't be in probably for their conditional use permit till the end of the summer, I think. So, we have a little bit of time to deal with it. I just wanted to bring it up as an issue.
Okay,
Hi, I'm Jeremy Hackbard with Epstein Ewan Architects, project architect. Yeah, and the intent for tonight is just to introduce you all to the project in more of a conceptual form, given that the construction on the main building won't start until next year. There is an early phase one, the north parking lot, that would start this summer. So overall, there are two major additions being added on to the existing building. Shown here, phase two on the north side. That's a just over 200,000 square foot addition, 3 stories. On the south side, it's a 2-story, just over 80,000 square foot addition. The phase 3 on the south side, that 2-story addition, occurs in phase 3 because there's a large 1- and 2-story existing building that'll have to be demolished. That's about 192,000 square feet. That'll be demolished on that south side. So sequencing is to build phase 2, the 3-story addition first, and we're calling that phase 2 because phase 1 is the parking lot this summer.
so you're keeping the student center, that's not where they eat their meals and, or you're renovating that too? The student center or the food place?
Cafeteria.
Existing student
Cafeteria.
center is going to be demolished, right?
Yeah, the student centers, yeah, if you're familiar with the existing building, there's
Oh, yes, we.
the gym just to the north of the word 3 there in phase 3. And so that's where the demolition begins, is just to the south of that.
South of the gym?
Yeah, south of the gym. There's a 3-story classroom addition on the southern
Yep.
end of the site there. That stays. That was built in 2001, so that stays. But the new addition is on the south. It's an L-shaped addition, 2 stories, and then to the south of that is the bus, the proposed bus loop, the one-way bus loop, and then there's a new parking lot, and then to the south of that, which would be to the south of the North Ave line. That's where the existing building extends to now. That'll be just an open grass play, practice field, play field.
And this is misleading, but Middleton Street will continue, North Avenue will continue along here. I don't know why that is not shown in white, given that this is, but,
Because it's existing.
Because
and
it's
they're not
existing,
doing
it's
anything
not.
with it.
Yeah,
well,
that's
but so is this.
that's correct. Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
correct.
saying it's,
Just a graphical thing.
I'm just saying for graphic, just because it looks like it's
Yeah.
not there.
I think the important thing to note there is that as it is today, North Ave does not continue through between Bristol and Middleton Street because of the existing building. And it is being proposed that North Ave does not continue through there just because of student safety, accessing that field.
No. We know where it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oops, I might get
Want
rid of
to
the,
turn off the
yeah, I know it's, I'm going,
contours.
pretty flat slope. I don't think we need to worry about it.
It sure is. So the traffic pattern on North Ave would be unchanged from what it is today, other than the bus loop that will access Middleton Street. Whereas today the buses are on Bristol Street, but as the buses would head south toward Franklin, they could maneuver back to Bristol Street.
They will be doing a traffic impact analysis as well. Or we'll be doing it on their behalf,
Scroll up a little.
what they're paying for.
So, on the north addition, being a large addition, that does reconfigure Lee Street. Lee Street does currently go through. It's two-way, both ways. It curves slightly north. Yep, there you go. So that parking lot that's there gets removed. Sorry, the one on the east, yeah, that one will get removed to accommodate the new addition and the reconfiguration of Lee Street.
Can I ask about the, because currently the access to the PIC
Yes.
is right there. That will remain, or that will be shifted?
That will be removed. However, the
There's the PIC.
Yep. However, the access moves to the north as part of the new design, new building design.
The PIC it'll be completely contained within.
That's correct, for the most part, yes, except for the west side, which is,
One thing we said at the staff level is that we still want to have a nice prominent vista towards the
Right.
PAC.
And they show that.
PIC now is
Right.
that kind of really nice glass.
Right, and so that's what this is intended to be when you come down Lee Street, and again, I would recommend this be shown in white. That's the idea, is that you have that opportunity to have a really.
They have that view in one of the,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, there are some conceptual three-dimensional views here. There you go,
there's
right
that
there.
Lee Street, yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't look quite the same, isn't it? So
Looks completely enveloped.
You want to go back to the main concept plan first? So this
I hate this damn thing.
district is losing some athletic practice fields in this phase one parking lot, but shifting those to the south.
They're losing.
So that's right now, I mean, I've coached baseball on that Diamond 11,000 times, that mosquito infested, swampy
Landfill.
landfill.
That's a nice
Yeah.
field.
So the area south of North Avenue, just gonna be open space.
Correct.
And, I mean, practice.
Got a field there.
Show it as an athletic field.
So what kind of field is that? Soccer or what is?
It's not
just open
decided. It's
It's
just
not
open
open.
space. Yeah.
Okay.
You could play rugby there. Play a lot of things there.
Okay, so what do you?
I do wonder about the homeowners nearby who are used to a kind of a building and traffic that will now have a athletic field near them. On the other hand, they're already close to the stadium, so
Won't be lit yet, right?
we're not like Edgewood residents.
No.
We like our lights and sound systems for football.
And they will be holding a neighborhood meeting also to explain them. And of course, the plan commission will be holding a public hearing on the conditional use and in the future.
Okay.
This is an expansion of an existing conditional use.
You remind us again of the timeline for each phase?
Phase one, that north lot, well, I should say the western portion of that north lot will be constructed this summer. Phase 2, construction would be spring 2020 through spring 2021. And then Phase 3, which includes the demolition of that existing portion, summer 2021 through summer 2022. So it's a long burn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's because you need someplace to put all the kids while you're.
Exactly. That's why that Phase 2 is a pretty decent, pretty good sized addition on the north side of the building.
The end result, is it more parking spaces or fewer?
The goal is net zero. If there is a gain, that's a bonus. You know, that north lot being constructed this summer, we're doing the engineering right now on that to determine that count. That south lot, it hasn't been designed just yet to get an exact count, but net zero is our goal.
So the architectural goal is that the kind of front door of the school would be where?
The front door of the school
bus
is
drop-off?
correct. There is a main entrance on the
Current
south.
feeder station is gonna go away.
Yes, the one on the east side
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
there. Yeah, that goes away. There's a small bus loop
That's
there.
atrociously designed, so.
That goes away. Yeah, yeah. There you go.
So here's my just design conceptual problem is that I like this idea of a kind of drive access like that for the buses. That's a kind of a front door and a welcoming station. I think that's. But the design is that right in front of it is a surface parking lot, right in the middle of an urban environment. I mean, already there's lots of surface parking lots, but within the existing neighborhood, it kind of feels as cobbled together as the school is now, right? Feels like it's part of the neighborhood. Now you're gonna set it back, which is great because it has that nice entrance point, but now you're gonna slap a surface parking lot right in front of it. I don't have a good answer to that because I have teenagers, and if I approved something that resulted in fewer parking spaces, I might never hear the end of it.
What if this were a green space? Build a field were north-south, and then the parking lot,
Well,
you know,
it'd be great if we could have fewer parking
what
spaces.
if the parking lot were here, and this would be?
I don't have a good answer, but certainly in any landscaping plan, you'll want to do something to real soften up that.
Oh, yeah.
Surface parking lot and make it look almost part of a neighborhood. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of constraints on the site, right? Because it's an existing building, and in an ideal world, we'd rip it all down and start again and replat the whole thing, but that's never gonna happen, so.
Right.
And from a planning perspective, we want the high school to stay here if possible, so
Oh,
we're
yeah.
trying to configure it. But I understand what you're saying about the landscaping, and I think that's an important point. And I think they're aware of the concerns, you know, to soften whatever they can and make it more part of the.
So will the buses come in like they do now? They're gonna come in Lee Street around the building, come down Bristol and then through that other. I mean, this is not a detailed engineering, but already the traffic flow in the morning is. Yeah.
Or would they come down Bristol and go in, or come down Lee and go around, or both?
I mean, that's an operational aspect that could be explored further.
Well, they're probably gonna make right turns in,
Yeah. You
go in the left turn.
try to
you have to
avoid
work- you
buses
got-
doing too many left turns.
Right.
The idea was to have this be a one-way up here so that kids are getting out on the passenger side as they get into this entrance, and then this entrance is available in the morning as well.
That was the idea, right? Earlier on Lee Street to make it one way, and then they reverted on that. Not that.
Yeah, you'll see there's a opportunity to loop back around as that portion, the north portion is one way. So you could loop back around and turn back out on Lee Street.
So maybe this is too early, but planning it for 3,000 students, so where are you putting the cafeteria there? I mean, maybe it's too early to ask.
No, I can shed some light on that. There will actually be two cafeterias in the building. One on the north addition, one on the south addition, and you know there are multiple learning environments in this facility, broken up between the north addition and the south addition to somewhat divvy those students up in the building. And given, you know, how great of a distance that is between the north addition and the south addition, we are providing facilities in both additions. There are admin spaces in the north addition and the south addition. There are classrooms, learning environments in the north addition and the south addition. And for, you know, lunch periods, there are cafeterias or cafes in the north addition and the south addition, along with eating areas.
But it's essentially two schools within one school. More or less.
And the Clark Street Community School will be redeveloped at some other point in time? Or refurbished?
That I think
Yeah.
becomes part
Yep.
of this.
Yep. So the Clark Street Community School program will move into the north addition.
Right.
And then in the future, that building will become a K-12 for the district. Or no, I'm sorry, a
K4. The
pre-K.
administrative office.
K4?
No, K4.
K4. 4K.
Okay, so what do you, so any more question? What do you need from here? All the referrals and then the public hearing date? Okay, so let's, unless you have more questions, so let's,
I just have one quick question.
yes.
And it's probably not part of the planning, procedure, but relative to safety of the school, has that all been addressed?
Yeah.
I'm sure it has.
I think that's actually a very important question.
Secured entrances.
Security and, you know, all of that stuff, the world we live in today.
Sure. I mean, there's you know, there are a lot of concepts that will be implemented into the building. You know, secure entrances are a big thing.
Access, all of it.
Right. Transparency
I'm
is
sure you
is
did
a
it,
big,
but-
yeah. And you know, we're still designing the building. There's a lot to design yet.
Yeah.
It won't be actually bid out until next spring, so there's a lot of months of design ahead of us yet.
And that's why we wanted to bring it just conceptually to get feedback and the referrals and, you know, this summer, maybe in June, maybe June 11th, have the public hearing on a zoning ordinance change. Just to, and then they could submit for the parking and get that done.
Okay.
I do have
Are
one
there
more
any-
question.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
Are there any questions or anything you wanted feedback from us tonight?
Well, I think one of the bigger points was the height issue. That north addition being 3 stories is about equal in height to the south addition 3-story that exists today.
Yeah.
However, there's a penthouse that will be on top of that north addition, and that brings the height of the building up to about 60 feet.
But it's set back.
It is set back considerably from the footprint of the building. You can see
And-
those in the elevations
And
that
that
follow.
is proximate to a football stadium, a baseball stadium, a parking lot. It's not adjacent to single family.
Right.
Correct.
And the development around it is, we'll wait to see Terrence's full proposal, but that's gonna be 4 stories and.
Yep, exactly.
I guess the other question is, I'm trying to conceptualize what you're doing along Bristol Street there. That's different from what's there now. Are you adding on to that? Because there's that little parking area right by what's the current greeter station.
Yeah.
Is that being filled in with building? Or that will stay as parking lot? I
No.
don't see it on this map.
That parking is gone.
And what, it's just gonna be green space?
Well, the northern portion of it is green
There's a building
space.
there.
Well, the current,
Parking lot outside the student center now.
no, the current, what's called the greeter station, right? There's that
Yeah.
half loop
The teacher's parking lot.
This area.
this area,
There you go.
yeah, that is always just a traffic and pedestrian nightmare, because everybody drops off their kids halfway around and everyone's running across the street. Teenagers don't always obey traffic laws.
So the entrance that's shown for the new bus entry is about a quarter way down that, right there.
Okay.
That's about a quarter way down the,
It's actually about the same spot as the exit.
Okay. No, it's a little
no,
higher.
it's further up. It's just south of Maywood.
Mid-block.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's Maywood.
Yep.
Okay, I see that now.
Sorry, it's right here.
Yep, so there you go. That's where the buses will enter.
Okay.
That's how much of that building's being demolished.
That's how much, yeah.
Wow, that's-
I think I was off onto how much of that building
Yeah.
is going away. Okay. I think that's an improvement.
Okay, any other question? And then I need a motion to refer it to water sources
Sure, you
and
can see it here. See this,
CLC, Public Works, and then set a hearing.
this square.
So I would make a motion to refer the project to the Water Resources Management Commission, Public Works Committee, Conservancy Lands, and to direct staff to set a public hearing for
Zoning
the
ordinance.
zoning ordinance change for conditional uses as outlined in staff comments. Give
Okay,
enough, Eileen, to,
Yes, thank you.
need a second.
Second.
Okay, and the city will do the traffic analysis. Do we need that as a part of it too or not?
Well, the city will do it and the school district will pay for it, but we're gonna get a scope of work from our traffic engineer,
Okay.
our traffic engineering consultant.
Eileen, that traffic analysis will be coordinated with the analysis for the new residential
There's gonna be
development.
one for that as well, so yeah, the same firm will be doing it, so the information that they gather, I'm sure will be used for both.
So that's not the part of the motion yet, right? Or is it?
Well, it's required for rezonings and for conditional uses, so it's just, it's just a requirement, the TIA doesn't have to be part of it. I just wanted to let you know
Okay,
that it was
okay,
gonna take
okay.
place.
Any more questions? Okay, so the motion is
referral and
refer to
public hearing.
Water Sources, Public Works, and Conservancy Lands, and set a hearing date for the zoning ordinance change. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for coming.
Well, now we are on
Thank you all.
we are now to great things here. Steve is here, presentation on a Greater Madison Vision survey results, and thank you for your patience.
And
You have waited a long time, and we didn't really know it was going to be that long. And
No.
really
I-
appreciate
I
that.
had
He's a
promised-
veteran planner, he knows how long these
Yeah.
things
I know how these go.
I
yeah.
had promised him a short meeting. I said, it's only 5 agendas. Let's put you
Yeah.
on this one.
Yes, that was,
Of course,
So-
then we added some and then.
Right.
all right.
I like to see the planning in action, so that's great.
Yeah, one item took way too long, so let's,
All right, great. So how do we, just like I say, next slide or something?
If you want to, or do you want to, yeah, I didn't even think about that. How do you want to do that? That's fine. Or
How do you usually do it?
yeah, just
we
maybe.
don't have a mechanism to advance.
Yeah.
If you want to, or you could
We
sit
did
here.
have one, I wonder where it
we?
went.
You could sit here.
It's not gonna work on a PDF,
You want to
so.
sit here?
Well, but he needs to, the micro.
Yeah, but he's got
Oh,
it.
he can take this, or he could take that one.
Okay.
Oh.
Or you can just tell Mark right over there, Mark, just.
Well,
Yeah.
I had full screen. Okay.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about the results of this Greater Madison Vision Survey. My name, again, is Steve Steinhoff. I'm the Agency Director of the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. And one of the charges that all regional planning commissions in Wisconsin have, we're one of 9, is to, under state law, is to prepare and adopt a master plan for the physical development of the region. It's meant to be an advisory plan for, to guide local planning and development. And the last time that a regional planning commission in this region did that was in 1997. That was a long time ago. We're way overdue for a variety of reasons that, is beyond the scope of my, of the topic tonight. But the point is that the current RPC
said, well, what's the best way to do this? And we looked around the country and we said, well, it's what works well in other parts of the region in terms of preparing a plan that really it has broad buy-in from leaders in the public is a more broad-based planning process beyond just the commissioners themselves, and to bring in business leaders and nonprofit leaders, and that's why we formed this broader-based Greater Madison Vision Initiative. It's guided by a 48-member steering committee. Mayor Brower and Mark Opitz serve on that steering committee, as do many others. And over the past few years, we've been collecting community input, stakeholder input, examining what are the driving forces that are going to shape our future in the coming decades, and working with the steering committee and others to compile that information into what if possible futures or scenarios.
I'll advance in a second. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it fully large, but you only sent it as I thought you sent it as a PDF.
I did.
Yeah, but it's not.
Let's just
go.
Yes.
Okay.
So, so that's the. So that's why we launched this scenario process. We created these alternative futures, these scenarios, and we put them in the form of a survey. And I guess that's our mission statement. You can look at it. So you can go on to this survey purpose slide. And the purpose of this survey is not only to gather information about preferences and what people want to see for the future and what the public wants to see, but it was also intended to be an education and outreach and awareness raising tool to involve as many people as we could into the process, get people thinking about possible futures and what types of forces we may face, what types of strategies may be needed to address those changes that we face, and how that relates to regional growth and development. So that's why we developed this public-based survey. And so if you took the survey, it's maybe familiar to you, but in general, we presented these 4 alternative futures that were based on what-if scenarios. What if communities in the region focus their efforts on one big area of change, whether it be population growth and change, environmental change, technology change, or governmental societal changes. And so each of those scenarios presented actions or strategies that communities could take. 4 of them, and people were asked to rank order them in terms of their top priority at the top, second by moving those up and down, clicking and dragging, moving those up and down. And then you could go on to the next slide. They were, for each scenario, also included a map of how growth might occur based on those types of approaches, and the estimated outcomes, 8 different indicators, such as household energy and transportation costs, farmland consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, tax infrastructure costs, tax revenue generated, things like that. Next slide, please. And so after people went through each of the 4 scenarios, they looked at the 16 strategies they put in priority order, given the opportunity to make final adjustments. So the outcome, each person generated a rank order of 16 strategies. Next slide. And they picked the growth option, the map and the growth option that they thought best for the region. Next slide, please. And people were also asked if they wanted to give comments about what their preference is for the future. Oh, my. And next slide. And we've also collected demographic and geographic information. So next slide, please. We conducted a significant outreach marketing effort. People in Middleton helped. For example, the Middleton Chamber of Commerce helped promote the survey, the city helped promote the survey, the high school helped promote the survey, and many others. And so I think we were happy with the results that we got almost 9,200 completed surveys, over 2,100 comments. Next slide, please. And so now I'm going to go through quickly some of the types of data that we collected. So as I mentioned, there were 16 possible strategies, and each person identified, put them in rank order. So this is what the raw data looks like. You see the 16 strategies and how many selections for each one were put in priority 1, priority 2, 3, all the way to 16. Well, that table of numbers is a little unwieldy to look at. So next slide, we group them into quartiles, basically adding them up, and it makes it a little bit easier, fewer numbers to look at. Next slide, please. And then we color formatted them, makes it even a little more easy. In this case, the darker the green, the higher the number, the darker the red, the lower the number. Neutral color is in between. So now you see the 16 strategies in descending order of number of selections from the top quartile, from the highest to the lowest. So in this case, 3,437 selections for more renewable energy and as priority 1, 2, 3, or 4. Next slide, please. And then you can also look at it even more, get a little better understanding by if you graph it this way. In this case, you can see the number of selections for each of the quartiles for the top 9 strategies that were selected. So the top one, the highest number are in the first quartile, and then they drop off, and then they shift as you go through to less and less in the first quartile, more and more in the succeeding quartiles, et cetera. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we also collected the number of votes for each of the growth scenarios, growth options. I'll get into that a little bit more later. You can see the conservation, scenario received growth option. The most votes, community and innovation, second and third. Self-reliance fell quite a distant fourth. Next slide. We also analyzed all the comments, so that meant reading through over 2,100 comments and categorizing them by sort of the broad topic, and then within those subtopics. It's just one example of how in one comment, we took the key points of it, identified it as infrastructure, social issues, and housing, and then further categorized them. And then that way we could get some numbers of what the comments were telling us, and make a little more sense out of them that way. Next slide, please. So just a look at the demographics and the geography of who took the survey. And how it compares to, in this case, the Dane County population. We are looking overall in the survey results at the 8-county region, but in terms of comparing the demographics, we focused on Dane County because that's where the overwhelming number of survey results came in. We worked hard to reach out to what we traditionally underrepresented groups, and in this case, we were reasonably successful with, for example, African American and those with 2 or more races, coming fairly close to the Dane County population level. We also targeted youth because this is a survey about the long-term future, and the youth are going to be making the decision makers when the time frame of this survey runs out, so those voices are important to listen to and are traditionally underrepresented. We worked hard to get out people to participate in the outside of Madison, outside the central urban area, and in the rural areas. The Dane County population in the rural area, that should be, there's no precise number because rural is depends on what you call rural, but it's pretty close to 10. We have got very good representation proportionally from the rural area as well. Next slide, please. But we weren't completely successful because you can see in some cases, especially when it comes to income and education, as is often the case in surveys like this, lower income and lower levels of education attainment were underrepresented relative to the population. We also didn't do quite as well with the Latinx and the Asian and seniors. Next slide, please. So you can skip past this. Sorry, I meant to. We can also look at the survey results by all these different groups. This is, I don't expect you to look at this and understand it, but it's mainly just in this quick overview, but it's to point out that there were differences across groups. By and large, if you look at some of the key top ranked, more renewable energy, green infrastructure, you see a pretty strong across all groups support for that, either in the top or the high rank. But you do see some differences that are also important to take into account, and I will highlight some of those as I go a little bit further through the survey. So now let's get to what we see as from all this information, what are the key findings. And so one thing that came through is that people in the greater Madison region see environmental challenges, particularly climate change, and the related risk of flooding is a top or near top priority for the region. And that came through clearly in this top ranked for more renewable energy and green infrastructure strategies. Next slide, please. And these were both part of the Conservation Alternative Future, which talked about communities focusing on the challenges of climate change, water pollution, more frequent, intensive, severe weather events. Next slide, please. And the result of the high ranking for these strategies could well have been influenced by the severe flooding that happened shortly before the survey started and was in the news and continuing through the length of the survey. So certainly, current events can influence the outcome of a survey. I guess I would argue that this is wasn't probably a one-off current event. It was what the science tells us will continue to be occurring throughout the future. So I guess in some sense you might even be consider fortunate that the timing occurred as it did. And so the strategies were more renewable energy, which really focused on essentially shifting to electric vehicles powered by clean renewable energy. And the next one, please. And the green infrastructure focused on, as you may be familiar with this term, strategies to infiltrate more water before it can run off. Essentially reduce the amount of water that you have to handle, by increasing the throughput, for example, through the Yahara chain of lakes or whatever. We received a lot of comments related to, about a fourth of the comments that came in were in just general area. This is a chart, so there were about 100 subtopics total, so you can see on the right the rank of the number of comments were made, how that fell. So increasing or prioritizing these things, conservation, environmental preservation, resource protection, and 198 comments. One comment saying we should do less of that. And so that was the third most of the, say, 100 some subtopics. Received the third highest number of comments. And you could go down the list and, so next slide, please. So key finding number 2, and it's this falls down in sort of the next 2 high-ranked strategies, more community-based resources, better connecting education and work, is really getting into the issues of access to resources, critical resources, and access to good jobs continues to be a high priority for most people and groups across the region. Next slide, please. And these came out of these 2 scenarios. Community Alternative Future, we're focusing on growing, changing population by making more welcoming communities that have more resources for people to meet their needs, and the innovation future, which focuses on promoting technology, job growth, and also connections that people can connect to those jobs. And this, these next slides give a little bit more detail about just you can see the selection of the quartiles and the description, and for better connected education and work, it's really better pathways to good jobs is essentially what that's mostly about. Not as many comments related to this, but all the ones that did come in clearly were about supporting low-income residents, increasing access to opportunity, equal access to service opportunities, educational quality, curriculum, et cetera. Next slide, please. Interestingly, one of the strategies, more tech job growth, basically doubling down on promoting technology job growth in the region, becoming a national model, increasing access to capital, did not rank that high as a strategy. And I think an interpretation could be that people felt, well, it's important, but we're doing pretty well. We get all these accolades as a technology region, job growth, but maybe not. Maybe the priority needs to be more on making sure that more people can access the opportunities and the benefits that job growth generates. Next slide, please. There were some demographic differences. You can see persons of color ranked these two strategies number 1 and number 2, and people with less than a college education also ranked them higher, and it's not too surprising. Finding number 3, people overall ranked expanding transit and housing options as high priorities, but these rankings varied considerably by location across demographic groups. So they came in at ranked 5 and 6, transit and housing. Next slide, please. You can pass that slide up. So Expand Transit was really about connecting Madison and surrounding regions with a better regional transit system. I also talked somewhat about driverless cars and adopting rules for them to reduce congestion, improve transit. But I think most people focused on the transit side of that and less on the driverless cars. I just think that's not really within people's mind frame in the current times. Expanding transit was ranked much higher in the central urban area, clearly not as high, and then the outer ring of Dane County. Central urban area in this case, as you can see, is defined by Madison plus urban Fitchburg plus Monona, and also includes Sherwood Hills and Maple Bluff. But it generally makes sense that the more...
Is that the central urban service area or something different?
It's different because we grouped it by zip code, so we had to use zip code boundaries.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we actually couldn't pull out just Madison, because the zip code dips into Fitchburg and pulls in Monona as well.
Because we're in the central urban service area. But
Right. I was trying to get as close to just Madison as possible, and this was the best I could do. But yes, that term central urban, for those few people who think in terms of central urban service area, might be confusing. Next slide, please. So expanded housing options was really about allowing a broader range of housing options and families to live in a community. Next slide. And there were some key differences here too. If you look at, this is where Middleton falls, what I call the first ring. So it's essentially the communities all adjacent to that central, what I just call the central urban. Expanded housing options, much lower ranked priority. And I think this could be attributed to some sense in some communities that, wow, we're seeing a lot of multifamily, a lot of apartments being built, and maybe that's too much, and we need to have. That was actually correlated with City of Sun Prairie's comprehensive plan survey, where the same finding came through pretty clear. But when you look at low-income respondents, expanded housing options, much high priority. So not too surprising there. Where the need is greater, or the sense that the need is greater, it ranked higher. Next slide, please. A lot of comments. You look at the rank of the number of comments we received related to transit and housing, overwhelmingly, as you can see by the numbers, saying we need to increase or prioritize local regional transit, more transportation options, affordable housing, walk, bike, etc. Next slide, please. Another finding is that, the total number of survey results showed preserving more farming areas, and note as areas, which is a broader concept than farmland, did not rank that high, but it was, if you go to the next slide, you can see that looking at these quartiles and the lighter green being the rural respondents who ranked this as a number 3 strategy, shows that there is strong support and priority in the rural areas for preserving farming areas. So not as many comments came in this, so you can keep going with forwarding. So number 5, so as I mentioned, I showed you before, one of the things we asked people to do was to select the growth alternative, and the most came in for conservation. That was a scenario where growth, about 50% of the projected growth would happen in already developed areas, which is about the last decade with the way it's been going, and that outward expansion the other 50% would mostly occur in outward expansion at current density levels of expansion, but it would be oriented away from expanded environmental corridors and agricultural preservation areas. The community scenario also had 50% development in already existing areas, but the outward expansion was going to be more dense, because the idea is you're creating more walkable communities with more access to community resources, more sense of community. The innovation scenario was 70% growth in already developed areas. Also, the innovation, the conservation and community both had bus rapid transit, but the community had a more expanded bus rapid transit and express bus, and the innovation added commuter rail as well. The self-reliance was about in the absence or the decline of state and federal oversight, funding, et cetera, communities go more on their own and therefore expand more. So there's 70% more growth in currently undeveloped areas, less transit. By and large, I think the strong vote for community and innovation was influenced by the better performance numbers that you saw from the indicators. These are 4 of the indicators. In general, the more you're developing in already existing areas and you're developing in more compact ways, you're consuming less land, you're spending less on infrastructure, you're generating more tax revenue, you're reducing vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. So there's the performance indicators looked increasingly better for those scenarios, and that likely influenced high support for those. Overall, if you add up the votes for the community and the innovation, they're higher than the ones for the other 2. So you see that influence there too. Next slide. Number 6, people want to see integrated approach to interconnected challenges. That was the largest subtopic category, and a lot of expressions that people didn't like being told they had to choose one growth option, or the act of prioritizing people found difficult to do. I know as public people, that's what your job is, and it is a difficult thing to do. But you saw comments like all of these things are important. I'd like a balance between innovation and conservation as the top two priorities. These things must go well together. They need to have a multiplier effect. Basically, don't treat these as, don't take a siloed approach. Disappointed I can't pick the community and the conservation future. Wedding these scenarios would help build a political coalition to make them a reality. So here's a sort of a Green New Deal type of person. Next slide. 7, youth ranked, when you look at the ages 15 to 19, some of the sustainability features, more local energy production, more locally grown food, ranked quite a bit higher. Next slide, please. And you can sort of see this from this, the quartile picture that they picked for these strategies. Next one, and more locally grown food. Next slide, please. And then finally, the last finding presenting here is that people of all demographics, locations expressed a desire for more social connections. And that gets back to that self-reliance and the small number of votes for that. Large number of comments we received about the desire for more social connections, people want to be more connected, not less connected. I think comments about the online culture pulling people apart, and there's a desire for more connect. You see the strategy of more online communication and remote living was roundly panned. Next slide, please. So this is the sort of a snapshot of the Middleton zip code results. It tracks pretty well in terms of the strategies with the overall findings. So green infrastructure and more renewable energy. Of course, Middleton experienced quite a bit of flooding. More renewable energy. Expand transit, number 3 instead of number 5. Walkable communities much higher than that, was like number 9 or 10 overall. More community-based resources was, a pretty strong priority. More local energy production, better connect education and work. The respondents in Middleton were fairly high income, well-educated, large numbers of between age 20 and 49. Pretty white. Vote for high top conservation, also the top selection, but innovation I think received more votes here. So you don't see in those top strategy more housing options I mentioned in the first ring suburbs. That those didn't pull through as well either.
I was going to add something, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
This is I don't know if we've seen the zip code until now for 53562, but the city of Middleton is really only to about here.
Right.
So this is most of the town of Middleton.
Yeah.
Some of the town of Middleton is in the Verona zip code, and then a portion of the town of Springfield.
Yeah.
So basically, everyone in the town of Middleton. I think once you get to Timber Road, I think that's the boundary to Cross Plains, town of Cross Plains. But anyway, it's interesting that this includes the majority of the city, but not Bishop's Bay.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because that's a different zip code.
53597.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Waukee zip.
yeah.
It's pretty much Wanakee over there.
That's what it is?
No.
So anyway, it's just we're lucky in that we still are mainly a one zip code city.
Yeah.
So the data is still, but we do have the township, which has a pretty different character of
And
development.
community of Bishop's Bay, so we really.
Yeah.
Well, other than Community of Bishop's Bay, we are encompassing one zip code still, so most of Middleton lives in that one zip code, but it's hard to separate us from the town of Middleton when you do a zip code study.
Yeah. And now if we wanted to spend more time, we could take the zip code and separate out those who said they were rural out of it, or suburban single family only or whatever. But I suspect that you wouldn't change the results all that much. So basically that's the survey findings, and where we're going from here is Mark and Mayor Breyer this morning, in fact, or noon, we're working with other steering committee members to take the survey results and start identifying what are some goals and that Greater Madison Vision thinks we should prioritize and focus on, and what roles might that group of leaders play in promoting those goals. But I don't think, Mark, I don't know if you passed out those questions, but I'm really interested. Also, I'm not just here to tell you things. I'm here to hear from you all as well, either through discussion right now, or if you want to write things down and hand them to Mark or Eileen, and I can get them. But I'm really interested, I'm planning on making as many presentations as I can throughout the region in order to get feedback and bring it back to the steering committee members as well as the regional plan commission on your thoughts. To what extent do you think these survey findings either complement or could be used to inform your current comp plan update? What priorities do you see that would be most important for a regional approach? And I think I already forgot my third question, but. So,
Any questions for Steve?
The role for the steering committee or CARPC?
Yeah.
I'd like to say thank you for coming and presenting.
Yeah, and all the
We
work on
appreciate
it.
that. Mark, a question for you. My understanding was you're rather active with getting a lot of younger folks involved with the survey.
I wasn't.
High schools. The reason I ask that is it was interesting to me that expanding housing choices was appeared to be a lower priority than we had been giving it in our discussions here, and I wondered if that was at all a reflection on usually younger populations would be more aware of sustainability issues as opposed to housing issues. Just
Yeah, well, we did try to involve the Key Club. They also, and the high school, so I
Did the
think.
youth center, did the youth center get?
Yeah, my
I thought I did it
understanding-
through the youth center.
Middleton Youth Center promoted it, yeah.
What I don't understand is why the age here, 15 to 19, is shown as essentially no response or very low response.
Very low response, yeah. We tried to promote it to Middleton High School, and I think they made some efforts, but it wasn't like Wanakee or Monona Grove where they set aside a time during the school day and they said, okay, everybody pull out your Chromebooks and take this survey. But that's okay. It's different communities participate in different levels. It's not a judgment or a critique. I think you're, Mr.
already heard.
Yeah, thanks. Your observation, though, is correct. When you look at the youth prioritization overall, the housing and transit ones were not ranked very high at all, but the sustainability ones were ranked much higher. That's
Partly, don't you think it's probably also because they're not thinking about the
They're not
housing
thinking about
choices
housing
right
or
now.
jobs.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They're living rent-free, they're not. really
Exactly.
thinking-
Right.
Yeah,
They don't need no better housing options. They got great housing
Yeah,
options.
Good housing.
Right.
Well,
They're
I-
happy with what they have, so.
I think it's fair to say that at least since this zip code includes the town, and the income and race here skew pretty upper income white in Middleton, that there's a certain segment of that population that is doing okay in housing. So,
Right.
so they don't think there's a need for expanded housing options, so. The question I was gonna ask is, this is gonna feed into a regional comprehensive plan.
Correct.
Does this also feed into, because I know it's been a few years since you've updated the area-wide water quality management plan with the designation of urban service area boundaries. Will this also be used for that?
We are in the process of updating the regional water quality plan summary document. So the CARPC is a contract. The DNR contracts with CARPC to administer what's called the water quality planning management process in Dane County, because we're a designated area for water quality in the state. And so there's a water quality plan, which consists of there's a groundwater section, there's a surface water section, point source pollution, non-point source pollution, all those things. And there's a summary document that tries to pull all that together. I think where this will influence that is that the Regional Planning Commission is looking at and it has started fostering conversations regionally about the need, to what extent should there be a regional approach to reduce the impact of future flood events, and particularly focusing on the green infrastructure or more infiltration, because you look at what the Dane County and the Lake Level Task Force are doing, and they're doing good work, and they're mostly focusing on how to increase the throughput of the water, at least in this case through the Yahara chain of lakes Yahara watershed. But less so are looking at how to reduce the volume of water you have to move through, and both of those are important to reduce our vulnerability to future floods. But approaching it addressing the regional infiltration requires a regional approach. So we've started to have conversations, as Mayor Brar knows, with Dane County Cities and Villages Association, Dane County Towns Association, Dane County officials and stormwater and planners, and City of Madison, Public Works people, and so we're going to be continuing those conversations more and more at the local level. Middleton and the City of Madison are working together, so I think that's where this survey reinforces that as a priority for the region. So I think that's really where it will help shape the water. In this case, it's more of a water quantity aspect of it.
Well, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and Steve would be happy to answer. Let's give Steve a big hand.
Thank you. So please give me your input and feedback.
Steve has been working very hard on this one, putting together, bringing the whole team together, and you serve a lot of work here, so. Okay, move on to item number 7, set a public hearing date for conditional use permit to convert duplex to 2 0-lot parcels.
That's May 28th.
John Laurent and Laurent Homes LLC.
Make a motion to set the public hearing for 7:15 on Tuesday, May 28th.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor to start this public hearing on May 28th at 7:15, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. You guys have been waiting for that, right? Huh.
Oh, okay.
Wow. All right.
Sorry.
We're just
Okay.
setting a public hearing too.
We could have done that, but anyway, so.
You should have.
Okay, all right. Comprehensive plan update. We
didn't have anything new, no.
Okay, so anybody wants to have anything to say, add, subtract? Okay, then need a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second, okay, we are adjourned. Thank you. It took longer, but that's how it is, so.